So we had somebody reach out, and again, this is a little more specific. It was kind of a multifaceted question, Chad. They wanted to know, can you give us a general overview or some best practices to develop a SOP for our superintendents? And the back end of that question was, who should lead the initiative? Who's the best person who should be training or holding other people accountable for it? But ultimately, how do you get that process started for, for let's say a superintendent?
Yeah. So the good news is that this answer will be relevant beyond superintendents, and I'll tie it into what might make superintendents, particularly unique on this front. But the process for building out a standard operating procedure that I recommend, that I've had the most success with consistently, is to begin with interviewing your best players on how they do what they do. And this doesn't have to be something that like you as the owner of the company have to do. You can assign an administrative assistant to just interview the person. You have all kinds of technology tools these days. I'd strongly recommend you use, recording tools so that you capture all this stuff. Consider using, GPT or Claude or something like that to take that recording and fashion it into something structured. No reason to give yourself more of a headache than you need here, but interview your best people about what they do all along the life cycle of a project. So with a superintendent in particular, these guys are complicated because they tend to be pretty strong personalities. They're awesome people. They're drivers, and they get stuff done out there. And they tend not to like standard operating procedures. They tend to kind of like to do things the way that they learn to do things, type of thing. But what's amazing, and I've experienced this many times, where you go through this interview process and they're almost like yelling at you. They're like, well, then you do this. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? And then you do this next thing, you freaking idiot. And then you do this, and then you always do that, right? And you never do these things. And you say, like, when you do that, how do you do it? And they're like, are you kidding me? You do this, this, and this. Well, by the time you get it all out of their head and you show it to them on paper, they're like, God damn, that's good. They look at it, they're pretty excited by it. And then that becomes a tool. So use your credible people as the resources to design your standard operating procedures, and work with those folks to unpack all the genius that they've got in their mind, get it out onto paper, and get what's on paper turned into training so that it can be something you replicate in your organization. That's my best recommendation for getting this thing started in a very practical way. Interview your people, record the interviews, use a tool on the other end to take those meeting recordings and turn them into SOPs.
That's great advice. Because I find that you do find resistance to documenting those things and being too rigid, but really, once you get them on paper, it is amazing just how actually complicated, how much of a wealth is there, especially from people in this industry who are, let's just say they have a lot of experience. It's getting a bit older, a little long in the tooth, and you want to get that information from those individuals.
Yes.
On, honestly. I mean,
exactly. That is one of the biggest concerns that we have in the industry, and that we're looking at with our clients is, you have got a lot of information that's going to disappear if you don't get very intense about capturing that information from these awesome people's minds and securing all that stuff. So couldn't agree with you more. And then last little comment on that piece of it, at least, is to say that, just because you've now interviewed your credible people and gotten what they do out into document doesn't mean that it's perfect. And to your previous point, you're going to iterate, you're going to improve upon it. It does then help to have outside experts evaluate what you've built and help you to optimize the standard operating procedure, because sometimes there's some pretty stupid stuff in there that you actually wouldn't want to replicate, and that, this awesome, credible person has actually been successful despite some of their stupid habits.
Yeah, we see that ourselves. So when we get in there and start talking about, it's amazing what, that culture, when you start building those SOPs, all of a sudden they become living documents, and they translate into, hey, can we create something tied to training videos? Can we try, let's do that. And how can the technology help us get there, so that we actually have a methodology to get our guys trained and get that stuff in there, they can actually start doing that. That starts to build out.
Yep.
Just there's so many tools out there they can use. It's really just about getting the ball started. as we transition here into meetings, I do want to let everybody know that Chad was kind enough to share some of his a document with us on really the kind of meetings and the cadences that you should be having if you're not already. And that's going to be an asset that you can download in a link. Jeff, do you know where that's going to be? Is that on the bottom of everybody's page? We're going to send this out to you via email after this, along with the recording of the webinar. But that is something that you can take away from here today.
Yeah, there's a resource, should be a resource button on the bottom of the screen that you can click, and that document's available to download there. But like you said, you're going to be emailing it out to them as well.
Okay. I mean, in meetings, it's really the crux. I mean, I'm sure you're having some at some point, probably most of us now, but are they seen as as necessary evils? Are they aligned? Are they chaotic? So with that, can you throw up can you throw that hand up there, Jeff, so we can see that? And then Chad, I'll let you kind of speak to just the critical nature of having those meetings.
Yeah. Well, while this is, go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'd had a question, but it's a little off topic. I can save it. I think I'll save it to the end. So go ahead and with your thought while I bring the document up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So while that's coming, I think your culture related to meetings, you kind of hit on it, Jack. There are so many contractors that are like, we don't have time to be in meetings. We need to be building stuff. We need to be estimating stuff. We need our workers working, not sitting in meetings. And I get it. I agree with you. And I want you to have as few meetings as humanly possible. And I also know that meetings create efficiency instead of damage efficiency if we're doing them right. And so what we've got here, is an outline of some meeting rules. So 4 rules for effective meetings: consistently, same time, clear agenda, don't reschedule, hold the meeting. If somebody can't be there, move on without them, record the sucker, right? Share out the meeting recording notes and make sure that they have, the expectation that they're to review and, comment on anything that they were supposed to comment on. Make sure they're data driven, but make sure that you're reviewing the data in advance of the meeting. Don't show up in the meeting and discover the data. Have pre-reads and assignments that everybody needs to go through this data prior to the meeting, so that the meeting isn't going through and everybody being quiet, looking at a screen and trying to understand a report, but make sure everybody's got to go through the report in advance. And that the meeting should be a conversation, which goes to rule number 4, which these are dialogues, not monologues. Meetings should be to have discussions. And if you're finding that the meeting is you giving a speech for 45 minutes and then everybody else leaves, that's a bad meeting. I mean, unless the point of the meeting was for you to give a rousing speech, that's okay. But that would probably be a one-off. I hope not something that you're doing every week. And then continuity between meetings, so that we have a shared notes doc. We make sure that everybody follows up and follows through on their items from the previous meeting. So the first agenda item in every meeting is following up on the actions from the last meeting and making sure that we've closed the loop. And I've identified a handful of sort of key meetings. One is a financial clarity meeting. If you're not doing a monthly financial review with your exec team, that's a miss. And I see so many companies, even big ones, even relatively successful ones, they're leaving so much money on the table because they're not getting together and actually reviewing what the data are telling them every month and identifying opportunities for improvement through the course of the year. For example, comparing budget to actual month over month and making sure that you're tracking not just revenue and gross profit, but also your overhead expenses. You don't want to wake up at the end of the year and find out how you did. You want to know exactly how you're going to do the entire time. So financial clarity meetings, estimating clarity meetings, right? And this is, designed to align on pipeline health and revenue pacing and pricing strategies and things along those lines. I recommend that you hold those weekly, that they're scheduled for an hour. The goal is to never go long. And if ever, always, if you're going to finish short, that's great news, right? You schedule for an hour, you finish in 45 minutes. That's a win. That's an estimating clarity meeting. Then there's an ops set of clarity meetings. So estimating to PM handoff meetings, these happen as they need to happen, right? So that's project driven, but there should be rules. And one of my recommended rules is within 3 weeks of the award, while it's still fresh in estimating's mind, and ideally as quickly after award as possible, you start getting your project manager, your superintendent, your foreman, whatever, whoever your ops team is going to be, involved in a handoff meeting. Have a checklist, work through that checklist in that meeting to make sure that is effectively handed all the way off from estimating to operations. A project management to field handoff could occur in the same meeting, by the way, but oftentimes requires a separate meeting because you don't know what field team you're going to put on it, but you do know what PM you're going to put on it. So same type of deal, at least 2 to 4 weeks before start, where everybody gets their head wrapped around the project and they start tackling what's necessary before we actually start to get underway with submittals and blah, 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 blah. Client kickoff meetings. And I recognize we're running short on time, but so I'll go fast. Client kickoff meetings.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good. Client kickoff meetings at the outset of every project. Get together with with your client every time. Make sure you go over scope, schedule, safety, communication, expectations for the project, so that you're abundantly clear on how we mutually define success. So we know and agree up front on how many mobilizations and what our sequencing is going to look like and things like that. Do that client kickoff meeting, document the client kickoff meeting, send that document to your client, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And anybody who's ever had to set up a claim knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then production meetings. And this is, your project management staff and your field leadership team getting together weekly to review progress on their projects. Now, this doesn't have to be a large team meeting. This could be just your relevant PM and, the 2 or 3, foremen that are working underneath, that are working with them on those 3 projects, reviewing the specific production on that job. And on this, you're going over, percent complete, percent spent, and making sure you're staying on top of it. Yeah, I recommend weekly, bi-weekly at the very least. Don't do these monthly. These are not your WIP meetings. Your WIP meetings are back up into your financial clarity meetings. And if there's a meeting that I hear about more often than any when we work with clients, they're like, man, this changed everything for us, is running an effective morning huddle. And a simple morning huddle with your on-site project teams and also internal project teams, right? Doing the same thing with your estimating group does a huddle. Your PM group joins the huddle with the field teams, and so on. Creates so much clarity on a day-to-day basis. What are your goals for the day? What did you accomplish yesterday? What are your goals for today? What help do you need to accomplish those goals? Pretty simple, but it creates that accountability and eliminates so much interruption through the course of a day that can be eliminated in a 15-minute morning huddle. If you're looking at this and you're like, this sounds like a lot of meetings, I would just ask you to reflect on how much time you might be wasting with people asking questions that they would have known if they had an effective meeting structure in place. I promise these meetings are, these are the meetings that are being implemented by the best-in-class contractors that I've ever had a chance to work with.
Yeah, I do have a comment in there that led into this. That was from the SOPs that led into the meetings, but we have a commercial and construction insurance attendee here, and he commented that written and documented SOPs improve your underwriting file for best of class pricing for your commercial renewal. So going back to the SOP statement, that's a real powerful reason why you want to have real SOPs that are documented and visible. So thanks for sharing.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. So, I've tried to make this meeting outline simple. As you said, Jack, as I bounce back and forth in my book between the strategy and the explanation, and then the very tactical, like, here's how you go do this stuff. And, hopefully these act as good templates for attendees to design their meetings internally.
We take that very seriously ourselves and having those meetings. And you're right. I think sometimes it can feel like, I don't know, whenever somebody, I think by nature, people we partner with ourselves internally, sometimes they hear the word meeting automatically, the hairs on the back of your neck start thinking, oh God, here we go. It's just, it's a session for 20 people to bitch at each other basically and complain. And I think we found ourselves, and I'd be curious to get your opinion on this, is that 2 of the things that are difficult are, 1, you have a lot of people that are going to try to justify not being in that meeting, and I think consistency is the main thing. So all of a sudden, well, hey, do you want me to do the job, or you want me to do this meeting? And so that's one of those things that, how do you address people that are consistently different people not showing up to that meeting? Because I think it defeats the purpose. And then 2, what is, if it's going to be done on a regular basis, I think it really, the meeting has to be prepared. You have to come to the meeting prepared, and having already done your due diligence. So what are your thoughts there?
So when people show up to meetings unprepared, everybody's a little bit different on this culturally. I recommend you end the meeting. plain and simple. Make it uncomfortable. Don't allow people to get away with wasting other people's time. Pick up the phone and call the person who didn't show up prepared and say, hey, man, not acceptable. I'm expecting you to have X and Y and Z prepared and ready for me next time. Make it uncomfortable. The harder of a line you draw, the more likely people are to show up and show up prepared. These are non-optional. These are, not for fun, right? These are structured conversations. Now, it's okay to have optional meetings in your company. I'm not saying that, right? Like, it's okay to have optional meetings in your company. It's okay to schedule a weekly meeting and have everybody have the expectation that you're expected to make this 3 out of the 4 meetings a month at a minimum, right? Or something along those lines. That's okay too. But whatever expectation you have, be firm and make it very uncomfortable for people to fall outside of that line. I'd say the same thing about accountability in general, man. Like, how many companies struggle with just getting people to do their job, right? Like, just do what you're supposed to do. You're getting what you're allowing. I've got clients right now that have zero issue with accountability. You know why? Because they fire people. Right? Because they absolutely don't deal with it. There's just no margin. And then I have people saying like, oh my God, well, if I fired people, then I would have no staff. And I would say, okay, got it. But you know why you have nobody interested in working for you? Because you accept stuff. You accept excuses. A teams don't have a problem with recruiting. Sorry. Right. So like, that's a part of the deal. If you want to build an A team, you have to have an A culture. And if you have an A culture, you will attract A players. And when you have C players on an A team, you've got to get rid of them. You've got to get them up or get them out. And you got to act fast.
Yeah. No, you say, I think I've heard you say before, people leave chaos, they don't leave consistency and order, so
that's right.
I will speak quickly to huddles. We've implemented huddles. We've been doing this for some time. I was actually Jeff sort of spearheaded that project, and what a difference on our operational every morning, like clockwork. And we're very time sensitive, 15-minute, but everybody gets on the same page, sets the standard for that day. And what we found was good was we had leadership jump in there at least once a week, like on a Friday, to get in there as well, not just to hear what's going on. So even people across department will get on that meeting so they can hear what's going on the operational side so they can align. But what I found was it was backwards. It was kind of interesting. Those people being there, myself would say, from a sales and marketing perspective, for example, the people on your team want to ask those questions that they don't normally have access to. So now they see that. So again, it really does. I think there's a tremendous value that you think like, oh, well, we have these big meetings, but those morning alignment meetings are just huge. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And those kinds of habits make it to where there's less like big meetings necessary because we're in such good communication. And inevitably we find this, we'll have clients who we're working with for the first year. And like, I'm telling you, every monthly strategy review meeting, which is a different type of meeting, not on this list, but every monthly strategy review meeting, it's like, oh God, yeah, right. We didn't do X or such and such happened. What such and such happened? And people are shocked to hear it in the room. And after a year, into the second year and into the third year of these habits, it's amazing to see as they've plugged in all of these conversations and they're truly preparing for and executing them appropriately. We're in lockstep. These meetings are fun. They're easy. They finish ahead of schedule. It's amazing. So, but you got to start, and I promise it'll suck before they're good.
Last thing I'll touch on before we jump to the next section here, and it was a question that came in beforehand there was a lot of older policies in place, a lot of maybe dated handbooks, that kind of thing. What's the best way to go about modernizing those, make them more relevant to a newer generation coming in?
Yeah, same thing as you would do with building them from scratch, where you're connecting with your most credible, most up to speed like resources. And the only difference is instead of interviewing them on what they do, you can basically lay out what the manual says and ask them where they're not doing that anymore and where they've updated and where they've upgraded in what they do. Now, if you're super far behind the 8 ball, same rule exists. Where do you start? Where you currently have problems, and you work and you get those things up to speed that way. But SOP improvement should be something that is ongoing all the time. So one of the biggest recommendations we have, again, not on this meetings list, but is that you have after action reviews at the end of every project. You take a moment, sit down and reflect. What did we learn? And how can we get better as an organization? And through that, ask, is there anything that we learned that should modify our SOP? And as you do that, it keeps it fresh. So keep the SOPs constantly in your communication cadence, and you'll be grooming them. You'll be keeping them current rather than letting them grow mold.
Yeah, that's great. And there are methodologies from a technology standpoint, getting somebody in there to help you modernize that. There are aids that you can use to streamline those processes. But again, it's a human process to start with. It has to be driven by you. And there's supplements that we can do and implement. But
yeah, what I would not do is ask ChatGPT, hey, here's my SOP. What should I do different and better? Because it's just not, it's going to be very, very limited in its relevance to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have another question on that topic. If you can, you started answering it based on the question Jack asked, and there's a little bit more detail. Someone wanted to know the two parts of the question. Who's the best person to lead the initiative on the SOPs? What they're asking for specifically, they're focusing their question on superintendents, building SOPs for superintendents, but they want to know who's the best person to lead the initiative, to train, and who holds others accountable.
Yeah. Okay. So to lead the initiative is different than who you might have help you to build out the SOP. So my answer on building out the SOP is the person who's going to actually, that superintendent, your best supers are going to help you to build the SOP. That's that answer. But who should lead the initiative? Man, that varies so dramatically by organization. But I will say this, that in a perfect world, and I don't know how big your company is and how viable this is, but in a perfect world, you have somebody who is dialed into operations. They understand how your company builds, how they understand how you make money, how you lose money. They understand safety. They understand, the core overall of the business. And they're not so buried in the business that they actually do have time and energy to advance initiatives on the business, if that makes sense, right? So that's oftentimes for a company of any of the size that can justify it, like a vice president of operations, a chief operating officer. Sometimes though, it's like an executive assistant. You don't need to be an expert in the business to do these interviews with the superintendent, but you do need to have the ability to have time and focus to carry out an initiative that is not, I got to get concrete in place on this project. We have a 4 a.m. pour and I got to be there, right? Like that's the person who's got that going on has a very hard time managing big picture strategic initiatives. And that's just a reality that I found. The smaller your business, the tougher it is, the fewer initiatives you can really take on. So you really have to make sure that you're prioritizing the right ones.
Okay. One more question on this topic. Looks like we have enough time, so we're fine here. And this interesting question, how many pages would you expect for a single SOP?
Pages.
Oof.
All right. So I talk about this in the book that there are core processes and then there are supporting processes and then there are sub processes underneath those supporting processes. So that if I take what is your process for getting work? Super high level, right? Marketing, business development, estimating, selling, negotiating, right? Like that kind of stuff. Those are your core processes. And then if we break down a layer underneath those, we're going to find a whole bunch of supporting processes under marketing for social media processes. And right, like I could keep going, right? But you got all these supporting processes underneath each of these core processes. So I'll tell you that like a core process section, such as marketing, not uncommon for that to be 12, 18 pages. A core process for something like job startup, not uncommon for that to be 12, 20 pages in that kind of zone. When you take a look at the whole of the manual, when you look across your whole business, not uncommon to see those end up being about 200 pages, 150, 200 pages in their fully built out form. And that is super intimidating to people. But I like I say, one at a time, right? If you did 1 page a day, you'd be done in a year, right? So don't freak out.
It goes by quick.
It does.
Yeah, I'll add that in our business, we have SOPs that are 10, 15 pages, and we have several that are just 1 to 2 pages, short
Yeah.
and concise. So I think the answer also varies based on the application where that
Yeah,
SOP.
and Jeff, that's why I focused on the answer being more about your core process. So if you take one component of a core process, such as job setup, right? That's going to be one component of your core process. That's likely to have a whole bunch of supporting processes, and the total of that is going to end up being 15, 20 pages.
Yeah.
Could we jump to the next slide, Jeff? With these processes in place, the measurements, I mean, no matter what, your company is comprised of people.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to, is having the right people, having the, getting them in there and keeping them there. And that really is what this next section is about, is the challenges of workforce. So talking about culture, attracting the right people, the top people, make sure they're staying there. A lot of information on that, but I really just kind of starting off, like, you want to just speak a little bit to, the culture, addressing some of the workforce issues.
Yeah, I think I referenced this a little bit earlier to say that, your A team culture is undermined by accepting unacceptable behavior, a behavior that your A players would never exhibit. If you're an A player on a team and you look next to you and you know that you're getting paid anywhere near the same as somebody who is nowhere near your standard, right? That starts to create resentment, judgment. No wonder whether I'm even on the right team. There's A players tend to catch a totally unreasonable amount of the workload to support the fact that there's a whole bunch of people on the team that really aren't operating anywhere near the same level. Now, don't get me wrong, A players like to be the best on the team, and they don't mind a little more responsibility. They like to see their name at the top of the list, but they don't want to be sitting there next to people that they would not want to share the same air with, right? That's just the deal. So when we talk about company culture, a lot of it has to do with what you simply, the behaviors that you accept, and that will become your normal. And another piece of advice I have on this is to be unapologetically different. Don't try to create a culture that appeals to everybody. This is the same, by the way, is true in marketing to companies as opposed to marketing to candidates. The same thing is true. If you tell the market, we do it all. If you tell the market, we do it all, the market doesn't know what you actually do. They don't believe you, and you have a hard time driving leads. If you tell the market, we do this very specific thing for this specific group of people, and we're elite at it, believe it or not, even though you've ruled out all these other potential sources of business, you're much easier to find, and they believe you, right? Those types of things. The same is true about candidates. Talking out of one side of your mouth where, we're a hard driving culture, it's all about top performance and blah, blah, blah. And on the other side of your mouth saying, like, we believe in creating unmatched work-life balance and a place where everybody can be happy, right? Like, nobody buys that juxtaposition. Nobody believes that both of those things are true. Own it. What are you? Decide. Tell people who you are. Faith-based organizations have a great time of attracting people because they're unapologetically faith-based, right? And they say that it's right out there, and they say, look, we're looking for people who share these values, and the people who believe that they come and work for those organizations. So be unapologetically different, own your culture, brand on it. I often use the example of the Navy SEALs, right? That is an incredibly high bar, very difficult gig, not made for everyone. And yet they have a line out the door of people who are trying to join that elite group. Figure out what your version, your spin on that looks like, and tell the market, plain and simple, this is who we are, and we don't apologize for it. But then also, do it, right? You can't fake it inside your organization.
No, that's fantastic advice. We had a question come in, and this speaks a little bit to what I've seen personally in this industry, and that's it's not always the fast to adopt technology, innovative processes. Yet there is a lot of innovation in construction. There's a lot of things coming out that are new. It's just that, again, based on the certain demographic, it's not always the quickest to. It's more, hey, we know how to do this, kind of the old school manner. We know what's happening. So the question that came in was, what's your recommendations on how senior staff, senior personnel, can really lead and mentor young emerging professionals? Because I think you have on one side somebody who's not really maybe putting the emphasis on maybe the technology or the newest innovative ways of doing things. But on the other hand, you have these people coming in that very much on the opposite side of the scale. So how you bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's so process before technology. And it's a give and take. Senior staff need to be open to the possibility that there are faster ways of getting the same thing completed that can be accomplished with technology that they personally don't understand, or that they're not, all the way up to speed on. And the younger staff need to understand that the right way of doing things, regardless of the tool, is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Now, if Jeff is doing that on his notebook and writing it out, and new hire Pete has listened to Jeff and has now created a workflow that automates all of that and takes him 7 minutes, Jeff needs to go find out what the new hire is doing. Right. And needs to get excited about that. But that new hire better learn what Jeff's doing before they start messing around with, shortcuts and fast ways of doing things. But, again, culturally, that's not for everybody. I'll be real with you, man. Like, culturally, I don't think that companies that fail to adopt technology are destined to fail. I'm worried about them. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm worried about them. But I do think that if a part of your culture is we're going to be old school and we're going to do it this way, you can accomplish operational excellence that way and beat people who are messing around with technology adoption all day, who don't have the kind of, well-defined, strong culture that you have toward operational excellence.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I mean, it is still a tool, and the processes drive that. The question is kind of what you said about fear is, I just wonder, do you have that same scalability sometimes that maybe somebody who's utilizing that new innovation,
Totally.
So that's
I am worried about them. I am. I'm not going to lie. So do I think it's a good thing to make a cultural decision to embrace change and to embrace advancements in technology and things like that? I absolutely do, but not ever before mastering process.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, the flip side of that is, and we've seen this a lot, people who buy the technology, the AI in a box, all the goods, and they have no idea how to utilize it. They haven't really given any strategic thought to it. It's like, okay, well, how's this really going to help us? Because they haven't taken the time to do what you just said, develop the actual process of how we do this and how we're exceptional at it. And then these tools actually supplement that, so you've got to do one before you get to the other.
That's right.
I'm going to interject here. We got just a time check. We got about 5 minutes, and there's a couple questions and a comment we could share. I don't know if you want to get to the questions or
jump to the next screen just for a second, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's AI and the future of operational excellence.
Yeah.
We had some questions come in on this, and I'm just going to take a minute. This was kind of an optional sort of section. I knew that we might be running a little bit longer on the other stuff. As you know, this is very, very much it's not the future, it's the now. There's just in probably half the tools you're using right now, they're leveraging some level of AI in there. And so I think what I want to say here in this is just simply that you don't need to be afraid of it. I think that much of the large technology innovations that come through, AI is going to be here to stay. It's something that you want to take piecemeal. You want to take a piece of and say, how can I use this to accelerate this small portion of our business? And then you take a look and then you apply that tool, because there's an infinite amount of tools out there that speak to AI. So one of the questions, again, really quickly was somebody in the civil, I think, construction industry. How do we leverage that? And I think it's simple. You take a look and say, hey, what's our pain point? How can we accelerate doing something that's taking longer and less efficiently? Estimating, job costing, I don't know, probably some kind of project management, and start to leverage this to make that a little more effective, be more efficient. Okay, and you probably need help with that. But again, I would just say, it starts with something small. You don't have to take on this big bear of technology to get there. Any thoughts real fast, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what you just said, and I guess my two thoughts regarding AI and construction. Number one is you've got the second bullet point, unifying and interpreting data from multiple platforms. One of the biggest barriers to use of AI from construction companies appears to be fear of security, fear of their information and security, and I don't want to educate my competitor on my data. And I've wrestled with this, and we do have clients that wrestle with this ourselves, and different people fall in different places on. I guess in short, I would say that if you're paying for your premium subscription or team wide enterprise subscription for GPT, and you believe their privacy comment or statement and commitments, it's kind of like doing online banking. Right. Like, I know people who still drop their checks off and who still write out deposit slips and, all those different types of things. I haven't done that since 2005, but I know people who are doing that. But that bank has all my information online, accessible, right? And sometimes it's breached, and I don't know what to tell you. I think the same thing is possibly true with AI. Like, we've kind of got to decide whether we want to do online banking or not. But I would love the idea of you being able to feed your data into AI. Now, you could go high end and you'd get an air gapped system and pay for a system on your side and spend that 250 grand and, build out that whole custom thing that, GPT can do for you for, $50 a month. You got to make that call. But there's amazing uses of technology where I could just feed it my whip, and I can say, take a look at all these projects, ask me questions about each project, tell me what you're concerned with. And that leads to my second comment on AI, which is just that I find the most value I've ever gotten out of AI is to provide it with data and then have it interview me based on the data before coming up with recommendations and suggestions. And man, the data is on point. It is really, really cool. Scary or cool, depending on where you fall on that fence. But I think it's something that we have to learn how to embrace, and everybody's risk threshold's a little different. I'm kind of, more comfortable with a lot of that risk than some others. Because I do online banking.
It's just, yeah, it's some people are leveraging it already, whether it's in some industries where it's tied even to their phone systems, how it's not perfect. I think that I want to get on this. We have a few more minutes here, but it's something that you need to be informed. I think it starts with just getting informed, understanding risks, what's happening. And under that note, I'm going to be teaching a class on this through the ABA coming up here. I'll send out information on that. It'll also be online, but it's again to do exactly that, to inform you of what's out there, what's being used. We're coming up right at the time. Chad, do you have a few more minutes to stay on, or are you on a hard break?
I probably can go like 2, maybe 3.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll go the last couple minutes. Jeff, any other questions that came in here on
Yeah.
that we can address?
Do a couple rapid fire questions, and one comment for everybody. We have a roofer in attendance, and they just wanted to point out that they went to the National Roofers Contractors Association website, and they had job descriptions tailored to their field that they used to put together their SOPs. So you can take that to many of the trades, and that's a great advice. So we thank you for sharing. Another question that came in on the insurance side is how to handle the pushback from employees on telematics program installation. So telematics would be like a car's black box. It's the communications and the data collections of a car used for tracking what's going on. It's also in the commercial auto loss ratio. So if you have any thoughts on, employee pushback that says, hey, you're tracking what I'm doing in my vehicle.
Brief. Yeah. A lot of employees don't understand the impact of the mod rate on company costs, and they don't then connect the dot between vehicle safety and mod rate. And they don't connect the dots between high mod rate and low profitability, and they don't connect the dots between profitability and their ability to make more money. So that's a good story, right? Is to be able to string all that together and say, listen, We are installing these so that we are safer as an organization. It's not about you. It's about trying to do the best thing for the greatest number of people. The reason is our insurance rates are here. Our insurance rates and, the mod rate, all that kind of stuff is influenced by safety. If we can keep that number here, that creates this kind of savings, $400,000, $500,000. If I lose that $400,000 or $500,000 in savings, I'm down to zero. My ability then to give raises and bonuses, as you might imagine, is deeply hampered by that. So what I'm trying to show you is just one of very many things in our business that cost or make us money. And this is a step that if we take and everybody becomes a safer driver, increases your opportunity for earning. So I guess you got to decide, would you rather make a little bit more money, or would you rather, us not know where you're driving?
Good question. I guess we can finish up with
Yeah, you went to
last
that last
question
one.
here. There's one short one. I think we can answer this quickly. And you might have gone over this. This is about the importance of meetings, but somebody asked, what's the single biggest mistake leaders make when trying to fix meetings?
They take them over. They take them over. They grandstand. That's the single biggest mistake. They say this meeting sucks, so I'm going to make it good. And they try to put a superhero cape on and they try to lead the meeting and they give a 4-hour speech, or a 45-minute speech, right? Or whatever. And that becomes the meeting. And everybody goes, wow, that sucked worse than our normal meetings. What they ought to be doing is leaning into the fact that their meetings aren't good, working with the team to design an agenda that works. And again, you can work from the templates that I've given you as frameworks to roll out, but don't make the bad meeting a thing that you're going to single-handedly fix by running it. Right. That is probably the single biggest mistake the single biggest mistake they make is they stop holding meetings altogether. That would be the second biggest.
Yeah. Because of that last one.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And I've totally come into businesses where I'm like, walk me through what kind of meetings you have. And they're like, we kind of gave up doing meetings. And I'm like, okay. Problem. Noted.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's awesome advice. Jeff, could you have that last screen? I just want to throw this out there for everybody as we wrap this up. Virtual CIO, trying to take everything we spoke to today. One takeaway that we want to leave Computer Dimensions with everybody who is good enough to listen today is, as you've heard, you should be having these meetings, the leadership meetings. We want to be involved with that. Not to talk to you about the hardware and the VPNs and all the great gizmos technology brings to it, but really to look at it from a business perspective. I think having the right people in those meetings is critical. Having somebody in there, maybe with the technology background who knows a little bit about construction, I think would give you a perspective that at the very least could make you a little more informed. So on that note, we'd like to offer, if you invite us, we'll do for first 3 meetings for free. We'll come in there, just listen to what you have to say, offer our perspective, our guidance, and take whatever value you can from that. But again, we'd like to be involved. We want to really give back to this community. So again, first of all, have the meetings, but second, have the right people in there. We'd like to be part of that meeting and helping you really move towards that top 2%. So if you were interested in that, my email is right there. You can take a picture of it, or that QR code will take you to our web form page, and you can reach out to us, and we'd love to meet you out there. Definitely get a chance. Well-Built Construction. The consulting firm is Chad's. His book, it's worth your time. I would definitely get it. We'll be sending some of you lucky people for a free version of that or a signed copy. Any closing messages, Chad?
No, thank you for having me. I hope this was useful for the audience that joined, and look forward to hearing from anybody who wants to talk. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Chad Prinky, and jump on our website at wellbuiltconsulting.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.